A corporate executive on 500,000 yuan salary got laid off one day, now doing odd jobs at home, delivering takeout.
Yesterday I worked overtime until 11 p.m. and today they told me I'm getting laid off.
还有13天过年.
13 days before Chinese New Year and I got laid off. At this point, it's impossible to find another job. Anyone else in the same boat as me? This young man wonders if there are others like him who have been laid off. In present-day China, there are too many cases like his, being laid off right before Chinese New Year, and it's extremely difficult to find a job afterward. I was born in 84 and just turned 40 this year. 6 months ago, I was making 300,000 yuan a month. And now no one wants to hire me for 5,000 yuan a month. Now I'm lost, not knowing which way to go next.
32岁找工作.
Searching for a job at 32. My salary dropped from 15,000 to 4,000 yuan a month, and I got fired just after 3 days. This distraught 32-year-old talks about the hardships of finding a new job. I just want to ask, do middle-aged people like us still have any opportunities? Unfortunately, there might not be many opportunities left. Layoffs and unemployment are prevalent in China, especially in the IT industry, where the majority are young people. Layoffs have become the new norm. Alibaba, the Chinese e-commerce giant, denied rumors of laying off 25,000 employees in November 2023. However, in its financial report for the third quarter of the fiscal year 2023 to 2024, released on February 7th, it was revealed that the company had indeed reduced its workforce by about 21,000 people by the end of last year, roughly the same as in 2022, totaling nearly 40,000 layoffs over the past 2 years. Alibaba has repeatedly denied large-scale layoff rumors, even going so far as to defend itself to the authorities, but the reality of massive layoffs cannot be concealed. Alibaba was once one of China's most valuable internet companies, with a massive workforce supporting e-commerce, cloud computing, logistics, and related services. Under the leadership of CEO Eddie Wu, who took office in September last year, the company formulated its future development strategy within 2 months, indicating that its various businesses would face the market in a more independent manner, separating core from non-core businesses. Under the new leadership of Chairman Zhou Cai, Alibaba has been seeking to divest peripheral assets and prepare to spin off its main business units into independent entities to cut costs. Since 2021, Chinese internet companies including Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent have been on a downsizing spree. Also JD.com, 58.com, ByteDance, and most other major internet giants have been laying off employees. Tencent's stock price plummeted by 12.9% before Christmas last year, triggering a collapse in a series of gaming stocks, Hong Kong technology stocks, Chinese concept stocks, as well as gaming ETFs and a series of funds and indices. The recent layoffs at Tencent, JD.com, and Alibaba have targeted high-level talents. Overcapacity and surplus talent have led China's internet giants to abandon their elite workforce.
Just before the new year, I got laid off. Have you heard about Elon Musk laying off people at X recently? I suspect our company is following the same script. I've seen too many people get laid off. Graduates from Tsinghua, Peking University, Hong Kong University, Berkeley, all highly capable individuals, but they couldn't escape the fate of being laid off. So I've never had any other expectations working in the internet industry, like promotions or salary increases. I think being laid off is just a matter of time.
Elite professionals are facing layoffs, and for lower-level workers, it's even harder to escape. For instance, JD.com no longer hires part-time workers, only full-time employees. It's likely that many warehouses will follow suit, meaning there won't be daily or short-term jobs in the future. Previously, JD.com was one of the largest employers of daily and short-term workers. Now that JD.com has led the way in laying off workers, will their lives improve? As for young people who have just graduated and are preparing to enter the workforce, the situation is that unemployment upon graduation is becoming increasingly common. Today is January 3rd, and I'm going to Harbin to find a job. It's difficult for me to stay at home now, It's very painful to stay at home every day. Before my dad came back from the construction site, it was just my mother and me. Now that my parents are both at home, it's almost unbearable. I really can't stand it anymore, so now I'm going to find a job as the Chinese New Year approaches. This young person is anxious about becoming a full-time child. The state-run media has coined several new terms for young people who can't find jobs after graduation, such as full-time child, lying flat tribe, stay-at-home parasite, and so on. Full-time child refers to adult children who live with their parents unemployed and receive some economic support from them. Some of them are preparing for postgraduate entrance exams or civic service exams, while others are constantly sending out resumes and some have become completely idle. State media have even criticized these young people, likening them to the stagnant scholars Kong Yi-ji, depicted by the famous Chinese writer Lu Xun during the Republic era, who refused to abandon his dignity and engage in what seemed like less respectable work. However, this criticism from state media is unfair. The wave after wave of layoffs in the internet industry reveals a decline in the industry's wealth-creating ability. Other industries in China are also far from satisfactory. Looking beyond the surface, we can see that China's economy is entering an era of decline. Delayed employment is another new term constantly appearing in Chinese media. This term refers to a group of recent graduates who have not yet entered the job market, including those who continue their studies and postpone employment. Surveys show that delayed employment has been on the rise for several months. In September last year, a survey conducted jointly by the Social Survey Center of China Youth Daily and an online questionnaire platform showed that as many as 72.9% of respondents knew college students who were delaying employment. In fact, after the unemployment rate among young people aged 16 to 24 in urban areas reached a record high of 21.3% in June, the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics announced in August that would no longer release this data. It was predicted that as the graduates of 2023 enter the job market, the unemployment rate would continue to rise. By manipulating statistics, the Chinese government can make the unemployment data look less alarming. For example, young people categorized under delayed employment are not counted in official figures. The Chinese Communist Party's self-deceiving statistics cannot make the problem disappear. Unemployment is not a singular issue. It is closely related to issues of birth rate and social stability. If the problem of unemployment is not addressed, the new generation of young university graduates will be unable to get married and start families because they cannot afford it. Their reluctance to start families will make China's population issue even more severe. If the population problem continues to deteriorate, the economic situation will worsen as well. Therefore, this is a perpetual cycle of political and economic problems. If the youth unemployment rate remains high, China's birth rate will continue to decline, and gender equality will deteriorate. Prolonged youth unemployment will force more educated young people to return to their hometowns. In the short term, as full-time children, they will return to their families, becoming stay-at-home parasites who consume their elderly parents' financial resources without generating income. Past generations of Chinese people relinquished political rights and freedoms to the ruling communist authorities in exchange for some economic development opportunities. This was an unwritten agreement formed between the Chinese Communist Party and the public during the rapid development period of China's reform and opening up. However, this tacit agreement no longer exists. For this generation of young people, what they are facing now is a terrifying reality where their opportunities have dried up, which is unprecedented in several generations. Young people are not satisfied with developing in small towns or rural areas because they want the same opportunities as their parents' generation, to enter the middle class and have the ability to build and support their own families. However, the Chinese government is attempting to urge them to participate in the new era of going to the countryside, a practice enacted during the 50s and 70s. In April last year, the Chinese government encouraged young people to work in rural areas. Guangdong province alone issued an action plan explicitly stating that by the end of 2025, it would mobilize 100,000 young people to go to the countryside to assist. The hardships of going to the countryside were not even experienced by the parents of these young people. They belonged to the bitter memories of their grandparents. Back then, their grandparents were forced to leave the cities and go to extremely difficult rural areas to engage in agricultural labor they were not trained in. This policy was enacted under the guise of learning from the poor and transforming ideology. Imagining the current young people reverting to the working and living conditions of their grandparents' era is simply unimaginable. Given the differences in eras, various conditions are vastly different from those of 50 to 60 years ago and are not feasible. The standard of living of this generation is expected to be generally lower than that achieved by their parents' generation. This is unacceptable for both these young people and their parents. When there are tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of unemployed young people in society, they will become dissatisfied and resentful. Their vigorous energy and accumulated grievances will become potential factors of social unrest. They no longer want to tolerate a dictatorship unable to provide them with the opportunities or even just survival that they desire. This force may generate significant political turmoil within China, and the cohesion of society is gradually disappearing. The Chinese government appears unaware of this potential crisis, so they are trying to take measures. This year, the Chinese National Civic Service Examination plans to recruit 39,600 people, an increase of about 6.7% over last year. Compared with 24,100 in 2020, the number of recruits will increase by more than 60%. This year's provincial civic service examinations have also significantly expanded at a rate of 17%. In addition, many universities have expanded their postgraduate admissions. According to data from the Chinese Ministry of Education, the expansion of postgraduate admissions in 2024 is 5.6%. However, these measures do not address the root causes of the high youth unemployment rate in China. The economic downturn, met with an increasing number of undergraduate and master's graduates, means fewer and fewer positions are available. Pursuing further studies only postpones the time to enter the job market and is not a solution to the difficulty of finding a job. As for the expansion of civil service recruitment, it is at most tens of thousands of jobs, which does nothing for the millions of unemployed. Moreover, in the case of tight national finances, what the bloated civil service needs is downsizing, not expansion. Another problem is that excessive pursuit of further studies renders higher education credentials less valuable. The competition for civil service positions has turned the exam into an extremely intense internal competition and has become common for people to fail the exam for several consecutive years. Meanwhile, the Chinese government, in order to stimulate economic investment in infrastructure construction, fails to create the job opportunities that college graduates need. Jobs in carpentry and masonry are not suitable for Chinese university students. However, the industries that college graduates prefer to work in, such as tech, education, and video games, are the very industries the Chinese government has frequently cracked down on in recent years. As mentioned earlier, the internet industry has been laying off employees, so how can it provide employment opportunities for inexperienced young people? The actions of the Chinese government only exacerbate the imbalance between supply and demand in the job market. So why does Xi Jinping repeatedly engage in self-destructive economic actions? Some speculate that the Chinese leader suffers from cognitive disorders. People are puzzled about his vision for China. Xi Jinping's actions seem like a series of foolish moves to outsiders. These include advocating for a new era of going to the countryside, the Feng Chao experience, the promotion of struggle, unwisely engaging in a trade war with the US, and successive crackdowns on domestic industries. However, for Xi Jinping, who seems to be reviving the Cultural Revolution, these actions may represent a return to the original aspiration of the Chinese Communist Party, a return to the Cultural Revolution, a return to the planned economy era, and the eradication of private ownership. It is said that Xi Jinping doesn't use the internet or computers. He obtains information solely through reports from subordinates that only deliver good news without mentioning any problems. Having fallen behind, only by returning to a simple and backward national model can he feel a sense of having everything under control. Given this analysis, if Xi Jinping manages to undermine the resilience of China's top tiers and elites, and further weaken the already precarious professional trust framework, he would essentially depend solely on a compliant bureaucratic apparatus. While this group might maintain a tightly controlled economic system similar to North Korea's, it lacks the capability to support a large-scale market economy with complex global integration. As a result, as more developed nations withdraw from China, the country's economic decline and social unrest become inevitable. The recent layoffs by big internet companies, combined with downturns in many sectors and rising unemployment rates, suggest that economic and social turmoil could be on the horizon. Xi Jinping's strong control, along with deep-seated political, economic, and social issues in China, worsened by shortcomings in governance and political culture, increase the risk of a major revolution similar to the upheaval seen during the French Revolution. If China's rural farmers and migrant workers, constrained by their education and cultural backgrounds, don't deeply reflect on the root causes of their hardships and remain relatively passive, it's likely that well-educated college graduates, social elites, and the middle class will become the ones to wake up first. As social tensions escalate, there are signs online suggesting that oppressed Chinese citizens are becoming aware at a faster pace, despite the risk of censorship and online restrictions. Some analysts believe that although the duration of this awakening process is uncertain, it's foreseeable that in a society where grassroots governance is lacking and the upper echelons are unable to act independently, China won't experience the peaceful dissolution seen in the Soviet Union. Instead, the prospect of a highly disrupted revolution akin to the French Revolution looms large. The underlying discontent in China is gaining momentum, and the world is watching for the day it boils over.